Once upon a time, in a lush and vibrant village deep in the heart of Africa, where the towering baobab trees stretched their arms to the sky and the river flowed like a shimmering ribbon of silver, there lived a young girl named Cinderella. Though life had not been kind to her, Cinderella was known throughout the village for her gentle spirit, her kindness, and her unwavering courage. She was the daughter of a wise and respected hunter, who had passed away many years before, leaving her in the care of her stepmother, Maika. Maika was a woman whose heart was as hard as the rocks that bordered the village. She was filled with jealousy and bitterness, especially toward Cinderella, whose beauty and grace only served to remind Maika of her own shortcomings. Maika had two daughters of her own, Ndidi and Zuri, who were just as cruel and selfish as their mother. From the moment Cinderella's father died, the three of them made her life miserable. They forced her to sleep in a tiny, dusty corner of the hut, and her days were filled with endless chores. Cinderella was expected to rise with the sun and fetch water from the river, clean the hut, cook the meals, and do the bidding of Maika, Ndidi, and Zuri. Yet, despite all the hardships she faced, Cinderella remained kind and gentle. She would often sing as she worked, her voice as soft as the wind through the tall grasses, a sound that made the villagers smile even in their busiest moments. Many admired her spirit, but no one dared to stand against Maika, whose sharp tongue and quick temper kept them at bay. One sweltering afternoon, as the sun was dipping toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the village, a great commotion erupted in the marketplace. The chief's messenger had arrived, and his booming voice echoed through the square. "Hear ye! Hear ye! The great harvest dance will be held in 3 days' time," he proclaimed. "Prince Ade, the beloved son of our chief, will choose a bride from among the maidens of this village. All are invited to attend, and the maiden who wins his heart shall become his wife." The village erupted in excited chatter. Young maidens exchanged excited glances, imagining themselves as the future bride of the handsome and noble Prince Ade. He was not only known for his valor in battle but also for his wisdom and kindness. Maika's eyes lit up with greed. She quickly turned to her daughters and whispered eagerly, "Ndidi, Zuri, this is your chance. Prepare your finest dresses, practice your dances, and make sure you capture the prince's heart. One of you must be chosen." Ndidi and Zuri squealed with excitement, already imagining the glory and riches that would come with being the prince's bride. But when they noticed Cinderella nearby, listening with hopeful eyes, their expressions darkened. Maika's smile twisted into a sneer. "And as for you, Cinderella," she spat, "you shall not attend the dance. You are nothing but a servant in this house. No prince would ever look at you in those filthy rags." Cinderella felt a lump form in her throat. She looked down, holding back tears. She longed to see the dance, to experience even a moment of joy. But knowing her stepmother's wrath, she dared not argue. Silently, she returned to her chores, though her heart ached with a desire she could not voice. That evening, as the crimson sky melted into the indigo of night, Cinderella carried a heavy clay pot to the river to fetch water. The path was long, winding through tall grasses and past ancient trees whose leaves whispered in the wind. As she knelt by the riverbank, filling her pot, she saw her reflection in the clear water, her face streaked with dust and weariness, her eyes filled with unshed tears. A small weaver bird, bright and colorful, fluttered down and perched on a branch above her. "Why do you cry, Cinderella?" the bird chirped softly. "Your tears are like raindrops in the river." Cinderella looked up, surprised but comforted by the bird's presence. "Oh, little bird," she sighed, "I wish I could go to the great harvest dance. I want to see the joy, the colors, and hear the music, but I have no fine clothes, no jewels, and my stepmother forbids me." The weaver bird tilted its head, its feathers glinting in the fading sunlight. "Do not worry, dear Cinderella," it chirped with a knowing smile. "The forest spirits see your goodness and hear your heart's desire. Perhaps they will send you a blessing when you least expect it." Cinderella wiped her tears and managed a small smile. "Thank you, little bird," she whispered. "You have given me a bit of hope." With that, the weaver bird flew away, and Cinderella returned to the hut, carrying the heavy water pot on her head, feeling a spark of hope kindled in her heart. In the days that followed, the village buzzed with excitement as preparations for the dance were in full swing. Cinderella watched silently as Micah, Ndidi, and Zuri paraded around the hut, trying on their finest clothes, painting their faces, and adorning themselves with beads and ornaments. They laughed and preened in front of the small, cracked mirror, their eyes sparkling with dreams of royal life. Cinderella, meanwhile, continued her chores, scrubbing the floors, sweeping the yard, and preparing food, her hands moving mechanically while her heart longed to be a part of the festivities. On the night before the dance, Micah cornered her in the kitchen, her face twisted with malice. "You will stay here tomorrow," Micah commanded. "You will finish all the chores, and you will not leave this hut. Do you understand?" Cinderella nodded, swallowing her disappointment. She retreated to her small corner and lay on her mat, trying to stifle her tears. As she drifted into a restless sleep, she dreamed of colorful dances, joyful laughter, and a kind face smiling down at her. The next day, as the sun began its descent and cast a golden glow over the village, Micah, Ndidi, and Zuri prepared to leave for the dance. They wore their finest clothes, bright, flowing fabrics that shimmered in the fading light, adorned with beads and cowrie shells. Before they left, Micah turned to Cinderella and hissed, "Remember your place. Stay hidden like the dirt beneath our feet." Once they were gone, Cinderella felt an overwhelming wave of sadness. She could hear the distant sounds of drums and laughter, and it only made her longing grow. Unable to bear the feeling, she slipped out of the hut and ran to the riverbank, the place where she often found solace. As she wept under the shade of a towering iroko tree, she suddenly felt a warm breeze blow across her face. The leaves above rustled softly, and Cinderella opened her eyes to find an old woman standing before her. The woman's skin was dark and smooth like the bark of the iroko, her hair was woven with twigs and flowers, and her eyes were like pools of water reflecting the moonlight. Cinderella knew at once that this was no ordinary woman. "Why do you cry, my child?" asked the old woman in a voice that was both gentle and wise. Cinderella, though startled, felt a sense of calm wash over her. "I wish to go to the great harvest dance," she whispered, "to feel the joy, to hear the music, but I have no fine clothes, and no one will take me. My stepmother forbids it." The old woman smiled kindly. "Do not fear, dear Cinderella," she said. "I am the forest spirit, and I have watched over you for many years. Your kindness and goodness have not gone unnoticed. I shall grant your wish." With a wave of her hand, the forest spirit produced a golden calabash. She dipped it into the river, and as she sprinkled the water over Cinderella, magic filled the air. Cinderella's ragged clothes transformed into a magnificent gown woven from the finest Kent cloth, gleaming with vibrant colors and delicate patterns. Her hair was adorned with beads and feathers, her feet clad in golden sandals that sparkled in the twilight. Cinderella gasped, tears of joy filling her eyes. Thank you," she cried. The forest spirit smiled warmly. "Go to the dance, dear child, but remember this, the magic will only last until the moon is high in the sky. You must return before the drumbeats of midnight sound." "I will remember," Cinderella promised. With a heart full of gratitude, she hurried toward the village square, her feet light and her spirit soaring. The village square was alive with music and laughter when Cinderella arrived. Lanterns hung from every tree, casting a warm glow over the dancers twirling in colorful garments. The drummers played with vigor, and the air was filled with the sound of flutes and tambourines. As Cinderella stepped into the square, the music seemed to pause, and all eyes turned toward her. She was like a vision from the stories of old, a maiden of unmatched beauty and grace. Even Micah, Ndidi, and Zuri could only stare, their faces twisted with confusion and envy, unable to recognize the girl they had treated so poorly. Prince Ade, standing at the center of the square, was immediately drawn to Cinderella. His heart leaped at the sight of her. "Who is this maiden?" he asked, his voice filled with wonder. No one could answer, for no one recognized her in her enchanted attire. Cinderella joined the dance, her movements graceful and effortless. Prince Ade could not take his eyes off her. He approached her, offering his hand. "Will you dance with me?" he asked. With a shy smile, Cinderella took his hand, and they began to dance together, moving as if they had known each other for a lifetime. The villagers watched in awe as they twirled and spun, the rhythm of the drums guiding their steps. It was as if the stars themselves had descended to bless their union. As the night wore on, Cinderella and Prince Ade spoke of many things: the beauty of the land, the wisdom of the elders, the dreams they held for the future. Cinderella found herself enchanted by his kindness and humility, and she could see that he, too, was captivated by her spirit. But as they danced, the moon climbed higher in the sky, and the first drumbeats of midnight began to sound. Cinderella's heart sank as she realized the time had come for her to leave. "I must go," she whispered, pulling away from Prince Ade's embrace. "Wait," he called after her. "I do not even know your name." But Cinderella was already running, her golden sandals barely touching the ground. As she fled through the village, one of her sandals slipped from her foot and fell to the ground. She hesitated for a moment, but knowing she could not stay, she left it behind and disappeared into the night. Prince Ade picked up the sandal, holding it close as if it were a precious treasure. "I will find you," he vowed. "I will find the maiden who wears this sandal, and she shall be my bride." The next morning, the village was abuzz with talk of the mysterious maiden who had captured the prince's heart. Maika, Ndidi, and Zuri were beside themselves with frustration, having failed to catch the prince's attention. Cinderella, back in her rags, went about her chores with a quiet smile, the memories of the dance still fresh in her mind. She had no expectation of the prince finding her, but she cherished the night she had experienced. But Prince Ade was determined. He searched every corner of the village, visiting every home in search of the maiden who could fit the golden sandal. One by one, the young women of the village tried it on, but none could match its size. When he finally arrived at Maika's hut, Ndidi and Zuri eagerly tried to force their feet into the sandal, but it was too small for both of them. "Is there no one else?" Prince Ade asked, his voice tinged with disappointment. Maika hesitated, then shook her head. "There is only Cinderella," she said dismissively, "but she is just a servant. She did not even attend the dance." Prince Ade, however, insisted. "Let her try," he said. Reluctantly, Maika called Cinderella into the room. Cinderella approached timidly, her heart pounding. When she saw the prince holding the golden sandal, she knew her time had come. With trembling hands, she took the sandal and slid it onto her foot. It fit perfectly. The room fell silent, and Maika, Ndidi, and Zuri could only stare in disbelief as Cinderella's rags transformed once again into the beautiful gown from the night before. Prince Ade's face lit up with joy. "You are the one," he said softly, taking her hand. "You are the maiden I danced with, the one I wished to marry." Cinderella smiled, her heart overflowing with happiness. "Yes, it is I," she said, "and I would be honored to be your bride." The news of their engagement spread quickly through the village, and the people rejoiced, for they had all come to love Cinderella and admired her strength and kindness. Maika, Ndidi, and Zuri were left to face the consequences of their cruelty, shunned by the villagers who once feared them. And so, Cinderella and Prince Ade were married in a grand celebration that lasted for days. The village was filled with laughter, music, and dancing as the two souls, brought together by fate and kindness, began their new life as husband and wife. Together, they ruled the land with wisdom and compassion, ensuring that their people lived in peace and prosperity for many years to come. And as for Cinderella, she never forgot the forest spirit who had granted her wish, and she remained humble and kind, her heart as pure as the day she had danced beneath the stars.